Yeah, you're good to go.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jo Henry. I'm one of the councillors in Follows Hill, and I'll be sharing the first part of this meeting. And as you can see from the agenda items, what we're going to discuss today. And as you know, the meeting has been
Live streamed.
Yes, that's right. So for the first item we have is apology of interest, apologies of absence.
So I know that Councillor Kahari is running late. I don't have any other apologies. Councillor Said is joining us online.
Declaration of joint interest. And they have an interest in eligible, no? Minutes of the last previous meeting. Everyone ready? Are there any issues of concern that we need to discuss?
No.
Okay. So we move on to appointment of chair and deputy chair for 26-27. Today is a changeover.
So normally we rotate the chairmanship, so the chair should now come from Sutton. I understand that Councillor Beck is being nominated. Is that formalised by members that he will nominate? Seconded? Agreed. Okay. You're the chair, sir. You need a deputy. Okay. Normally the deputy comes from Merton. You've got two options in the room. Will you be continued as deputy councillor?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay. Is that nominated? Agreed. Excellent. Okay. So it might be useful at this stage because there are a lot of new faces in the room if we do a quick intro of who's here. And then that means I can make sure I've got all your attendances correct. I'm Richard Seedhouse. I'm the clerk to the board and I'm a Democratic Service Officer from Merton.
Jo Henry, you'll be elected deputy chair.
I'm Vanessa McCain, one of the local councillors in Sutton.
I'm Charlie Alpera. I'm one of the public. I just thought like a small presentation about diversity relations to the agenda, but it might be long.
Okay.
I'm Sam, Secunda, one of the councillors for Sutton.
Sorry, Church, I'm the treasurer to the board.
Andrew Kaufman, Head of Box Services for Merton.
Jan Comer, councillor.
Jason Stone, councillor from Sutton, Gloucestershire Ward.
Hi, I'm Rob Beck. I'm a councillor from Sutton and am the current chair of this board.
Yours,
Thank you very much, Councillor Henry. So the first item is appointment of treasurer to the board.
Right.
You did say that there was a
And we do have an update on this. Shall I take this one, sorry? Our candidate who is listed in the item is not able to take up the post, and we found out in the last day or so that that was not be the case. And at the moment we don't have another candidate, do we? So this item will need to be delayed to a future meeting, and we can move on to the next item as soon as we have a treasurer in place.
that side is it your last meeting? Sorry. Well, thank you very much from everyone probably here and also those beforehand as well. So how long have you been here for?
Since July 2011.
That is a couple of stints. So, Rich, can you please minute it? Just the acknowledgement from the service. So he's given.
Well done.
Thank you very much.
This you do. Thank you.
Take my apology.
Thanks. So we are taking that item at a later meeting. So on to agenda item 6, which is the abstract accounts. And I do believe this will be you presenting, Zoe.
Yes, it will. And I have a confession to make. I grabbed the papers that I thought were for the board, but it's for the February meeting. Right. Is it possible you can put it up on the screen?
I can try.
Hang on, look. Because as good as my memory is, I won't remember the details that I need to remember.
Listen here.
Brilliant. So this is in the same format as every year to the board. You'll be asked at the end of it to agree 4 recommendations. If you could go a little bit higher. So to approve the accounts, to note the internal audit assurance at 3.5.3, which I will tell you a little bit more about as we go through the report. To approve the revised estimates for 26-27, and to review and agree the risk register as at Appendix I. So we've compiled the accounts. They will be made available for public inspection. I've already sent them off so that they'll be published at the same time as Merton's accounts for public inspection. So this will be for 6 weeks over the summer, or this summer. In compiling the accounts, we've got 4 areas of variance. 4 of them are quite small. Actually, there's 5 areas of variance. One is quite a bit more, which is to do with income. So we've achieved higher levels of income from interments than we anticipated. So that's the main cause on that. Then I always note down for everybody what our sundry debtors and creditors are, just so you can see the movement between years. At the end of closing the accounts, our overall common fund balance is just over 1.35 million. Now we will need that balance because you will hear when Andrew does his report that we will need to start setting out the new area of the cemetery for burial use. And last time it cost us 1.7 million to lay out the last section, and this is of a similar size. So any money we can cobble together, we gratefully received, because as a last port of call, we have to go back to the local authorities, and we've already got one loan that we're repaying, which I will talk about a bit further on. Because we are a small body, we are audited by internal audit. This arrangement came in with effect from the 1st of April 2015. And that means I produce the accounts by the end of April, and during May, internal audit review the accounts and then sign them off. Yeah.
So,
So if you click at the top, you see, and there's JC at the time. So this has been signed off by internal audit. So basically they've had all my workings and everything, and they've gone through it with a fine tooth comb, and they're happy that what I've pulled together reflects the activity during the year. And there's the statement that's provided once the head of internal audit has agreed that she is happy with all the work. Attached as Appendix H, we've got revised estimates. There is one change to that at the moment. I will revise it again if we decide during the meeting that we want to hold 3 meetings. Then we're on to Appendix H. So there is just that. Oh, there's 2 amendments there. Apologies. So we have a reduction on. If you could go up a little bit. on the rates. We've now had the actual bill for on the rates rather than estimating. And I was able to reduce that by nearly 9,000. And then the other bit is an increase of 30,000 on the front railings. So this is to undertake some essential works on the railings. We are bidding for resources from Heritage Lottery Fund, but we don't know the results yet. If we don't get the money from Heritage Lottery Fund, we'll look to the Merton Legacy Fund, or if we need a top up from the Heritage Fund as well. So that's an overall difference of 21,000 at the moment. So then if we go back to the report, we've already started the accounts. Right.
Further on.
Yeah, keep going. This is all the introductory blurb. Oh, no, sorry, further down. Apologies. So this bit here summarises how the land at Merton and Sutton is currently being used. And we start off with the movement in reserve statement. So here you've got the movement in reserves for 24/5 and 25/26. Then you've got the balance sheet. So as you can see, our common fund balance has gone down. That was because we knew our income figure was going to go down this year, but we needed to do the essential works to the front railings. And there were also some essential works to be done on the roads and footways in the cemetery. And that, again, that's replicated in the report. That's the debtors and credit. And then this is the income and expenditure account. So we also give you 24/25 outturn, and we also then draw comparisons to the budget and to last year's action as well. And that summarises all the movements to the common fund. And this is the movements of cash in the organisation. Then we're on to the asset register. So this lists all the assets and any writing down and depreciation. So this, I think, is for 24/25. Then the next one is for 25/26. And then I've also put in what we think it will be for 26/27. So there we've cleared out a few old assets that we've had a look around now, and we're happy they no longer exist. And then Appendix F gives a very succinct summary of all the activity of the board since it first opened in 1947. And shows the overall balance. So it shows the income and expenditure, the net position for each financial year, and then the overall fund balance. Then, as I mentioned earlier, when we set out the last section of the cemetery, we took out a loan from both Merton and Sutton. And this schedule here shows that we have just completed year 13 of the repayment schedule. So that original site was deemed to last 25 years. It looks probably it's just going to be over about 22 years by the time we've used it up. So we will be looking to write off over a slightly shorter period if we do borrow any money. And if it's a small sum, we'll obviously try and write it off quite quickly. And then the final appendix is the risk register. So that normally involves Andrew and I meeting up and going through and reviewing all the information on the register.
Okay. Shall we go back to the 4 decisions?
Yeah.
Right, if you tell me that, before we prove it, has anyone got any questions? Okay, there we go. Right, so I'm going to do these one by one, put them together. So we've got recommendation A is to receive and approve the abstract of accounts for 2025-2026. Agreed?
Agreed.
Recommendation B, to note the internal audit assurance in section 3.5.3. Is that approved? Okay. Recommendation C, to approve the revised revenue estimates for 2026-2027 in Appendix H. Is that approved? Okay. And recommendation D, review and agree the risk register as of June 2026 in Appendix I.
Agreed.
Marvellous. So we are now on to the next item, which is the annual governance statement.
You want us to share that one?
Yes, please. Yeah. I was consistent in missing everything to do with the meeting. I was all right. I've been talking about setting yesterday, so last time. Right, so we are required, along with London Borough of Merton and London Borough of Sutton, to pull together an annual governance statement in which we review the governance of the board and everything related to it. So I've got a very short covering report which sets out why we do it and the best practice that we follow when we're compiling it. And then as attached as Appendix A, we have the actual AGS itself. So very much when I'm putting together the annual governance statement, I wait until Merton has pulled together its annual governance statement, because a lot of the systems and procedures that the board uses are actually based on Merton's systems and procedures. So basically it's a pared down version of the things that are considered by Merton, covering the main principles that we are asked to cover. And it's pretty much business as usual as it has been in previous years, going through the principles and how we believe we've considered those in our activities. The one thing that is new is right towards the end of the report, and that is where we are advised to actually highlight what we feel are the main risks that we have or issues that we have facing the board. So it's on page 49.
See.
Yeah. So it's a bit further down. There we go. Key issues facing the board, and they're both for you, Andrew. Lucky you. So the first one is the mobilisation of the new grounds maintenance contract. And the second issue facing the board is the starting plan for setting out the new section that will be needed over the next 7 or 8 years. So you may think we've got plenty of time to plan, but when we set out the last section, really we started planning to set that out about 7 or 8 years before it was actually delivered. So really, it's quite timely that we are considering setting that section out. For anybody who is interested, I believe it started in about 2009. So the reports are readily available going back to 2009. And we started with a specialist report on the area and then took it forward from there. And I believe over this year we will be commissioning something very similar.
You need to do like something against these issues.
statements, so do you cover that? For sure.
No,
We'll just do that on the.
we're going to run it in order this time.
No problem.
So, you know, that is basically it. I'm not aware that internal audit are worried about any particular issues in Merton and then Merton and Sutton.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, that's it. Well, thank you, Zoe. So you done presenting on this board?
It is, yes.
Thanks very much. Is there any questions on that? Okay, Sam.
So I think an issue that's sort of come up, I think when I was on the board a few years ago, was obviously the issue of sort of repaying back, potentially repaying back any VAT. I don't know if that's sort of still the case, for now, sort of back to budget situation going forward, you know, looking at that. You know.
We haven't repaid anything as yet, but I do net off the bank balance against the cash. So it is allowed for the figures. And with the new contractor, that's been geared up so that we claim VAT back. And also we made a decision, I think it was at the last meeting, to under the contract to rent out the peppercorn rent. That means we don't breach our partial exemption level, which is quite a complex calculation that we do. But if we breach it, then we lose quite a chunk of VAT, so we can't reclaim that. So we've offset both of those. So I'm confident going forward from that when we review 26, 27, we will be able to start claiming VAT again.
Other questions? Okay, we'll go to recommendations then. So there's only one recommendation on that, which is that the annual governance statement be noted and agreed. Is that agreed with everyone?
Agreed. So before we jump on to the next one, do you just want to cover the point around the third meeting, whether or not we ought to have one or need to have one?
We normally only have 2 meetings of the board. It's all about finance really. One to set the budgets and one to do the outturn and the AGS. We have in the past, where it was needed, had a 3rd meeting of the board, normally around about November time. That board, we normally report 6 months worth of financial information and discuss any issues for which we've deemed that we need to hold a meeting. From the 1st of November, a new contractor will be taking over all the grounds maintenance and the building service. So it's whether the board feel they would like to meet up to actually review how that's been implemented, how in the first few weeks things are running. That will probably be, for the first few weeks, will probably be more of an oral report rather than a written report on the update. But it is for the board members to decide if that's what they would like to do. We can also, the royal we, provide more information about setting out the new section with information that we have for that. So it's entirely up to you what you would like to do.
So I'll go with my thoughts on that. So as I said previously on this, I'm more than happy to be led by officers on this. If you feel that there are things that need to be presented to the boards and this additional meeting in November would be beneficial for us, I think we should go ahead of it. Additionally, given that we've had to defer the appointment of the treasurer to the boards, is that something that could be helpful to have that done in this additional meeting, so the following meeting we know who will be?
It certainly wasn't on, assuming that one has been allocated by November. But in theory, yes.
If not, we bring you back. You normally, the first meeting of your place, I think, you normally go on site to have a look at them.
Haven't done that for nearly 5 years.
I think we need to do that. I think if we're going to see how the new contractor is doing, we could actually amalgamate that and have a look and see what they're doing, if possible.
So from a technological point of view, having meetings at the cemetery is quite difficult. You can't live stream from there. and there isn't a designated meeting space, but if you wanted to have a visit, I think that's something that Andrew could arrange for you. We could find a way of either just arrange a visit and you could have some informal chat with the new contractor instead of a meeting,
Was that covered?
or we could do a bit of both.
I think
I
that would,
would recommend one or the other.
yeah, I think that would be helpful. I think the idea of a sort of an open invitation to board members to do a site visit, you and the contractors, for those that want to attend, I think it should be a part of this meeting.
Yeah, and then obviously keeping everyone sort of updated as well. So obviously, in terms of the demobilisation process, on training and the mobilisation process as well. Quite a long lead-in time. Again, see with November and the fact that, to say, like the contracts are now been shared, we're kind of looking to because the service will be run from the civic centre, so they'll start within the civic centre. We'll be kind of looking at getting the office sort of set up. So we want to kind of get everything kind of running well ahead of schedule. But yeah, I think talking to the service contractors as well, obviously part of that mobilisation process, more than happy to do that and accommodate.
So at the moment, in terms of scheduling, I've already scheduled a meeting for the 17th of November because it's far easier to put that in your diaries and remove it than it is to do something after all of our councils' calendars have been set. So what we could do is we could change that from a meeting here, stick with that date and time, have a site visit with a discussion with the new contractor. And we will introduce the new treasurer at the February meeting when we have one. So I will take the official calendar, but I will leave it in all of your Outlook calendars so that you know that it's coming.
Could I make a slight suggestion? 17th of November, I think it's highly likely that it's going to be wet and windy.
Wear your Wellingtons and a phone.
Was it wet? So that's not an issue for me.
No, you finish what you're saying, though. You can say no, you've said what
Well, look, I was just wondering whether it was worthwhile doing because there's a lot of new faces, an introductory tour while it's nice. And then meeting on November would be all about meeting the contractor. And then explain stuff, and then you would know kind of what they're talking about because you'd have a bit of a tour. And then if it was tipping it down and saying Maddie that you couldn't go on, it wouldn't be so much of an issue. Don't know, it's more administration, isn't it? And but you would also then have the flexibility of the meeting actually being held here rather than at the cemetery. The key component being the contractor turns up here.
I'm quite relaxed. I remember this.
I think it's more when the suit for you and the contractor, Andrew, more than
I think yeah, from the timing point of view, I think it's obviously contracts and contributing stuff, which are kind of the process that's going through at the moment. But again, in terms of the mobilisation and demobilisation discussions, they're twin tracked. So again, it's just keeping people updated in terms of that, you know, in terms of the process and kind of where we're at. But there's nothing that's coming out of those meetings where there's a you know, that's going to be a problem, one issue. I mean, a lot of the equipment and everything else is already ordered. There's a lot more electric fleet and all the other sort of stuff that's going to be the more interesting things that people might want to see. But yeah, I can kind of keep sort of process to keep that open.
So what we're doing?
So let's just run this back a second. So the extra meeting, okay, so I was getting a bit confused because I was getting an impression from you that you thought that would be a helpful thing to have.
It was, I think, as I say, it's useful in terms of at that particular time period because say, the processes would have gone through. As I say, as you're thinking about the merit of it, if it happened earlier, I don't know whether there is as much merit. And again, I suppose it's almost sort of saying that we feel, I think we are advanced in the process and there's nothing of concern. But as you say, it's just that whole thing as you transition into a new provider. So it's whether we just bring the new provider, like the new provider with us. So they would obviously be obviously the contract manager that would obviously be responsible for the main things that I tend to lay out in the report. And again, I suppose it's,
Is it highly likely that the contract manager will be the same contract?
No.
manager?
I think it's very likely it won't be.
Sorry, where does we have how many cemeteries? 5?
We've got 3 main ones and two
And
close.
where does the contract manager base?
Contract manager is based at Hillcross Depot.
So what I think we could think about having a tour at the Hillcross Cemetery.
You don't run that one.
Again, but the Hillcross is the depot location.
Not the cemetery.
And again, you've got London Road and Gap Road are the other 2
Yeah.
open cemeteries. But as you say, I think you guys is only interested in the Sutton joint. And again, that is set up so we could accommodate a visit. We have a cafe provider there that could potentially
Because I did it
host
for
us.
all the cemeteries during, my little time of being the chair.
Yeah.
So I went on all of them. And I think it would be useful if, all members just have a tour of one of the cemeteries.
We only oversee this one
Yeah.
cemetery.
Yeah.
So yes, it needs to be that site. And again, we could accommodate that, with the cafe.
Yeah.
So on the tea room, so we could accommodate it there. And again, obviously, we can look at booking the chapel space as well. So
I used to always book tours, well not tours, but London Road Cemetery and Gap Road. So if anybody thinks we could go back to that, but that's not part of.
no, this
Yeah,
is
so we
purely
can do that.
just
Everybody got spare time.
for the MSJs.
Different thing, people want to see if you can organise to do that. Okay.
Okay, so I ended up being a bit confused with this one here because I thought at the last meeting we had, we decided to not have a vote.
So we decided to decide at this meeting whether or not to have the 3rd meeting because
I really do think the position in terms of where we're at and the mobilisation period and the timeframes that we've got, I feel comfortable in terms of the current position and the fact that obviously we're going to base in the cemetery's administration staff. I think they're now at the civic centre, and that's kind of something that's going through the process at the moment. The whole thing about the transfer of staff, so the GP arrangement, it's all going through. The initial meetings all happened in July. So in terms of, I'd be concerned if there was a shorter lead-in time, but the time frame that we've got and the works, all the stuff that's already been done, it's a nice to have. But I think you could factor it into potentially the next. Yeah.
All right, so I think that's where I would be comfortable with that, keeping it existing at 2.
Yeah.
Not adding a 3rd one, unless there is some kind of governance issue that comes up about the appointment. That's not in between.
Just take a person.
Obviously, you could let us know, and then we have to fit that in somehow, somewhere. But as long as other members are comfortable with that, I think we should remain at 2 for the year. Okay, that's grand, and then we can go on to the final agenda, which is the client.
Sorry, instead of a meeting, do you want a site visit? Do you want that in November or do you want it at another time? A site visit in November?
No, it's a bit cold in November, a little bit.
Just all delay each time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're more than comfortable to do it. We'll bring brollies. We'll have a big everything else. But as you say, it's nice to see it. We can probably go over some of the bits in terms of things like some of the maintenance prescriptions and those
I
things.
mean, wait till you get all the flooding issues and stuff,
Yeah.
that's where I would go.
Yeah.
And we'll see some of the challenges. So we'll keep that on the 17th and I'll update your Outlook invites to show that it's a site visit,
Yeah.
not a meeting, and I'll update the municipal calendar to show that, okay?
Brilliant. Okay, final item, client contract.
That'd be nice. On those, around. Added some extra maps and stuff in there, some that won't have as much working knowledge of the cemetery, so some now in there as well. And I can run you through high level delivery during the February June period. All right, guys. Thank you for sharing. So yeah, I'm just going to run you through again. Obviously, just from the chair's point of view, it's just that it's, you know, obviously the overall we're looking at decisions of review and approve. That's on client side report, accurate representation of what's happened between the period. So obviously the key things, so in a February to June period, again, we want to make reference to Appendix A and Appendix B that are in the document, but obviously sort of timely and considerate variable performance during the period, which is in line with sort of like 2024, 25 and to take place at the Merton Sutton Cemetery, and a continued positive working relationships with both Merton, but also with area service providers around the borough. And so that's Appendix A, which kind of shows the 26 years so far. And then there's a high level sort of document there in Appendix B, which kind of takes you through what the purchases, the memorials, the planning and laying out, the transfer of relay spaces, and also like enhanced grade maintenance. But I think from a positive sort of point of view there as well, you know, we're certainly on target to achieve the excess income target as well. So we need to come back from either early contract period. Obviously, from a grounds maintenance point of view, so that's either the UK. As I say, it was a bit of a slow start, to be honest, in terms of the grass cutting. But again, obviously, caught up in the April period, and now fully maintenance, and that's primarily related to seasonal recruitment that happens at the start of the campaign. But say we're a strong team now, both on the ground side, so that's the tractor, driver resource, the big areas of grass, and then the backup as well, which is done with the one-on mower. And then again, someone has the unenviable task of going between as well. But we are leaving longer sections of grass, memorial sections as well. So from the borough's point of view, it's certainly something that we look at, so more conservation grass margins and stuff to our to cemetery sites. But probably something that we would look to enhance as well. And I know we have talked about the green flag sort of process and the fact that that's not joint cemetery and then lends itself to a potential future green flag application. Maybe it could be a joint borough as well. So again, in terms of like sort of the cemetery, sort of the horticulture operations. So again, obviously we continue to maintain the seasonal bedding, which we will manage for the duration of the Ida Verde contract. So we have the summer bedding that's on in at the moment, and then obviously we will also have a winter display. But I would probably bring in maybe to the next board meeting a bit of a discussion about the more sustainable planting options for the future. A lot of our parks and open spaces have moved away from the seasonal bedding, although there have been an improvement on the peat free. So again, obviously from a sustainability point of view, very positive. But again, your sort of show and overall display is not great, and I think there's probably more opportunity for more perennial planting. And we've got some quite nice examples of that's in the parks as well, and aware that Mark Gazelle from on Sutton. It's just that I know that I think they've got a right plant, right place, and I know the cemetery that they want the interest, but they want the colour, but at the same time, I think there is a balance between strike there, certainly. So the biodiversity potential of those plants and areas. We've got horticulture, so as well as the horticultural works, we've also got the arboricultural inspection. So we've obviously had quite a detailed arboricultural inspection of all of the trees, obviously sort of prior to the start of the bird nesting season. And then we would look to do a programme of works from October onwards on the site. And again, obviously that will be something that I'll be presenting at the February meeting. We've got to be partway through that process there. So October to March is the usual sort of time period for a lot of that works. Nothing major in terms of works. There's obviously there are some works on some of the crowns on some of the trees. Most of the works in terms of the risk factor. So particularly like on access paths around the cemetery, there's been obviously sort of dead wooding and ground cleaning that tends to happen. That all happened last year in terms of the risk factor works. Good news, obviously, we have 18 new trees on the Garth Road perimeter, which went in as part of the enhanced tree planting. As you know, we've been across the borough with about 1,000 trees, which was finished at the end of March. But yeah, 18 trees down there, and it's a list that species of things planted, and they are currently in a 2-year basically our maintenance program with our term contractors, partner and tree specialists. The other element, the stuff to note, and again, I think Zoe mentioned it here within her report, is the money that has been allocated for works by our facilities management team, which primarily looks at the infrastructure within the cemeteries, so both the vehicle and the pedestrian paths. And again, key areas have been noted. A budget has been allocated for those works. So I think it's the main infrastructure works in section V and section MJ, which were the highlighted areas. So if you refer to the map in appendix 4 of the document, there's a few images there as well to show the detail. In terms of the other elements within the report, mentioned there about, obviously, I know Joey mentioned on the works on the Garth Road perimeter wall line. So the high risk elements that was approved by the board February the other year, those works are now completed on site. Again, obviously those areas now looking absolutely fabulous. It was to note that, as Zoe mentioned, we are waiting for the outcome on the Heritage Lottery application. We had in to improve the that particular margin. So that includes both improvements to the existing brick piers, as well as removing the railings, obviously shot blasting and powder coating, and then that's going to add another 50 years to the life of those, of those railings or longer. But the process that we had to follow was the fact that obviously there's lead paint in the infrastructure, so it's not something that we could actually do on site, so it had to be removed. Obviously, while we're waiting for that money to come in, obviously from the Heritage Lottery, we are maintaining the sections of scaffolding in the locations where they are needed. And obviously we have extended that contract for a period, but obviously we'll make a decision closer to the time to get the results from the Heritage Lottery, which should be mid-July. And if that is the case, as I mentioned, we either get the full value that we're looking at, which is circa 300,000. If we get the full value, fantastic. We would look, obviously, there is a potential option for a match funding option within Chas legacy bid. But again, obviously, we'll consider that closer to the time. But the feedback we've had so far from the Heritage Lottery is a positive application. The wall line itself is something that's on the register. So again, like to be considered. Obviously, we'll update closer to the time. The other element, obviously, is the fact that we obviously got the Leeds in the Garden tea room. Continues as an operation to go from strength to strength. I'm really positive, and I'm really pleased with the work that Debbie and the family have actually done to enliven an area of the cemetery. They obviously, at the moment, obviously, like they do run a 7-day-a-week application. So again, opening and closing, but they also do support some of the cleansing and maintenance on that as part of that agreement. I think there's some certainly the things from TripAdvisor and everything else continue to maintain a really high standard. Cakes are fabulous. If any of you guys are in the area, you must pop in and see them. I think on a Wednesday, those sort of things. Just really pleased that they continue to engage, and to say, I know that a lot of the people in the room have been supported with the team and stuff down there. So long may that continue. As we mentioned, obviously in the report as well, but again, we are currently working with our service contractors at Conways to look at the options for laying out the new sections. So we've been looking for a detailed technical specification and price document to be coming back to the board for the February meeting. Again, obviously we're looking to share that in terms of that process. I think, yes, I think that covers the main points. Just any questions, queries on the board?
I agree that the coffee shop, it's just, the tea room is just lovely, so lovely, and I'm so pleased that this, that's, going for the French to me. The 100K on the paths, are those areas that have flooding concerns as well?
So again, yeah, so the one section B would need ACO drains.
Yeah.
And again, it's more difficult on the cemetery because we have quite limited margins either side of the path. But we have been talking to flood risk management about the potential of adding some swales either side of those paths, which would be like I suppose a seasonal attenuation of the water on site. So to be honest, it does provide a little bit of habitat potential. There is some money already allocated in Chad's legacy option C this year for natural flood management. And that would be one of those areas we would look at.
It's definitely something we should be looking into when we do that site visit.
Yes. So yeah, section B is the one of note, which is and that's actually the vehicle, the main vehicle access road, and then obviously the MJ is the pedestrian path on top of that.
And last question, I've been alerted to this by the elderly community, so that's the WBCX section.
Yeah.
Something called, and I saw this on the news as well, it's lawn graves.
Okay. Yeah.
So edging is being removed, and the families are being contacted by the council to pay for the removal, which is stressing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And very upsetting for the families. I'd like to know, what the details about this, how has this, come about that, families are being notified about it through needing to pay for it, rather than actually consulted previously about the whole process and why it's happening. It seems to be a bit of a blunt instrument when somebody's grieving over their family members, then say, like, give us something.
Yeah, no, so I'll say, I'm more than happy to sort of share if you have like sort of specific sort of sections
I can bring that
to mention, but no, I was to say what I would sort of say in the wider piece that again, when people buy a grave section, again, and a particular memorial that they go for, so again, you've got the lawn grave, but you've also got the memorial as well. So again, like the two elements would come out when the initial purchase is made. And again, there's quite a clear document. I think it was shared at the last board meeting. It's actually quite a detailed brochure that now goes out with every request. So when people are making a decision, they find out the section that they're looking for, and these are the elements that would be included. But I would be more than happy to follow up with very specific cases.
Yeah.
Because would this be like, has it been requested at a later date? So once. Because again, obviously, usually they would have all of this detail along with the brochure.
The problem is when you're grieving,
Yeah,
you're not looking at the detail. And, you're not going to go into the whole, finite, small print of the grave and what it means. And just getting that shocking kind of, I've got to pay more money for something that I have no, idea about. It is upsetting.
Yeah, no.
I don't blame them for reaching out and saying that. It's very honestly.
Yeah, to be honest, if it was particular families, I'd be more than happy. I would want to respond to that.
Perception, I don't know what they said to me. They said it seems like it's only the elderly community, which is I was a bit surprised by. I don't think that's true.
I think every section has the option for a lawn grave or a.
But they were just if there was that feeling like, why is it just our community that's being targeted? And I have to ask that question.
Completely. And again, so to be honest, I could probably I've got there's a standard sort of process map that we would we would take the family through. Again, and again, obviously, in particular, what the top documents and details that come out at each stage. But more than happy to look at the specifics.
Yeah, okay. I'll get the details for you. I'm sorry to raise it.
But again, I think it's. To be honest, because we are trying to build more lasting relationship, particularly with each of the section, which is the why, as a not as a joint cemetery, as you look at all the denominations that support, and we want to have a proactive relationship. But as you say, it's only as good as
that cultural and religious sensitivities that I think we need to.
No, I completely understand that. And again, if you're happy to share those bits with me, I'm more than happy to prepare something.
Andrew, can I ask you about the team?
Yeah.
It sounds extremely good, but I'm always worried about how much money it's making. Are we responsible for that on our balance sheet, how much money it's making or?
Yeah, I think,
Is it okay?
yeah, but I think to be honest, from the point of view of the, you know, see the charity that, you know, they actually sort of support. So from our point of view, it is, you know, it's a pepperboard sort of arrangement, exactly. But and I think that's why we kind of did build in the element in terms of the toilets and those sort of things as well, which the provider was happy to do, because as I say, it's never gonna be.
It's not
Costing, but at the same time, it's also the fact that when people are attending services, as you say, when we do have opportunities like on Wednesday, that they're important. I mean, it's always difficult, but I know that we have worked with like a number of other local authorities where they do have a tea room within a cemetery environment, and we have, to be honest, there has been some difficult discussions that we've had to have with the provider in terms of some of the items out the front of the, you know, because obviously it's the first thing that a family will see when they're driving in. But at the same time, I think the open engagement.
I like the idea of it.
Yes, concept. Yeah.
Sorry, just to say, usually it means the chair will direct questions.
Okay.
So rather than it's in a free for all, and there's a hand up down, there was a hand up down here for quite a while. And
Thank you.
it was just a councillor, please.
Andrew, I'm just wondering about the caretaker's house. I haven't heard anything about it.
Yeah,
Do
so
you fill us in with what's happening?
Yeah, so
Like,
so process with that one, because obviously the caretaker no longer carries out the function, but as you can imagine, as a tied property, with the process that we would have to follow, that we would have to find them a similar sized property. But as you say, that's a sort of a process at the moment. We're in negotiations with legal.
We're still
services. We're still going through the process with the states and legal.
So
But the notice has been served.
Because it's been going through the process.
It has, and again, to be honest, I think it was only brought to the attention in terms of because it's October 24 was when he was obviously like full time, and then he went part time. But again, as of the end of last year, he no longer carried out the function to lock and unlock the cemetery, and at that point, that kind of triggers the process. But as you say, because we do have to find the person an alternative to that premises, so that's the process that we're going through at the moment.
Do we have any other questions? Anyone else?
I have a comment. My comment is, I just want to say to everybody who works within the under the department, you know, it's a great honor to see when we attend funeral. The grounds are nice and clean and comfortable, and people always eager to get their funeral happening in Merton. You know, so just want to say thanks, and I hope we continue to keep up the good work.
That's appreciated. I know that I think all the guys, particularly in the cemetery sort of site, they take a lot of pride and care. I know Alan has incorporated a number of new beds that he's done and actually sort of funded with working with like the RHS. So yeah, as you say, there's definitely a passion. But again, as I sort of mentioned, there probably is a few elements. And again, I know Charlie's going to he's going to do a little bit about like obviously potentially biodiversity, but it's certainly something as a borough that again, obviously the different processes for management can all be incorporated, and there's lots of opportunity on the site. So again, I don't know whether Chair, that's okay for Charlie to do a presentation based on.
Absolutely. When you came in and said what you had planned, I'm really looking forward to hearing it. So before we do that, can we just take the recommendation to your right, Andrew?
Check.
So only one recommendation is that the annual governance statement be, oh no, wrong thing, sorry. Looking at the screen of the papers. The board is asked to review and approve the council client side report as an accurate representation of the council's operational and project activity with MSJC between the period of 25th February 2026 and 22nd of June 2026. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Now, please, fire away.
Can I share it?
Do you want to, if you email it to me, have you got my address? richard.seedhouse@merton.gov.uk, and I can share it for you.
So as you're waiting, can I ask you a question? It's about, not about, it's about London Road. I've seen it, so somebody can have a look, because the roads need to be resurfaced, so I was there the weekend.
Yeah, I'll have
It needs to be tidied up.
Yeah, so to be honest, if you want to send me an email, but I know Nigel Emberton in facilities management has a price on ways with sort of sections in, as we do with MHJC, sections in the main road.
Yeah.
And then obviously the offshoot parts.
Like a virtual tour. Yeah.
You going, sorry?
31st of August.
Oh gosh, you got time.
I've saved it on my leave, so I actually go the 28th of July.
Making me
It's my last day.
all this time.
Just gonna pop you an email with specifics on that, and if you can send me an explainer.
Yeah, so I think that actually because I want to do some. The extract
Yeah.
text to
Anything you can send over.
Yeah, actually, I'm happy to specific text as well. So, yeah.
Okay, right. Thank you, John, for hosting us. I'm not here to criticise, by the way. I'm more than aware that support when you only meet twice a year. I'm also more than aware that a lot of the decisions that went into this cemetery took place decades ago. And a lot of things I'm about to mention take place in cemeteries. It's not unique to you. I'm also aware that I don't have the full picture, despite the fact that I do read all your minutes, and I go to your cemetery pretty much at least once a month. I visit. The reason I go is that I'm a local bird watching group. That is our bird watching area. So it's about 300 acres. Your cemetery is a large part of that. Also the Horsefields, which you own, traditionally called Hyde Hill. You call it Area B, I think, less romantically. The area is known as Sparrowfeld. It was once all common land until Henry VIII took half of it, and much of it became Cheam Common and Magdalen Common. Your cemetery in Garth Road, that was Magdalen Common at one point. Next slide, please. And then there it is. So that was the last bit of common land, except Wimbledon Common and Mitchell Common, I think, in Merton, that come to enclosure. But it's your cemetery. Next slide, please. It's a unique area. You probably know this because it's Merton and Sutton, the boundary, but there's also Kingston. So it's quite odd to have so many boroughs meeting. In fact, it's totally unique to have three boroughs meeting with so much green space shared. If all that belonged to one borough, it would be one very important strategic area. But the fact that it's three, it sort of gets forgotten about, I feel. Sort of at the edges of three boroughs, no one knows it's there. There's always this little chipping away of a little bit of green space. So as bird watchers and friends group, we're trying to take this a bit more seriously and making it aware how important it is. Because the sum is greater than the part, is probably
best way to describe this area in biodiversity sense. Next slide, please. I always start any conversation about biodiversity by reference to biodiversity crisis. We are the most nature depleted country in Europe, if not the world. In London, there is a relentless chipping away, not so much in public space, but it does happen in public space. Wherever MOL is being sort of released, parks are having AGPs and louvers built on them. Lots of headline numbers, don't worry too much. The one headline number I thought I'd put in yellow there. Zoom out. That's probably at the top. Oh, no, it hasn't come up. Never mind. 2.5 Hyde Parks are lost every year to building, and that's in private gardens. That was the London Wildlife Trust and Giggle who did a survey just by doing satellite imagery. They subtracted 1 year from the next. Most of that was patios. This was 2010 study, patios and sheds, but that has only accelerated since COVID, where people are building offices in their gardens, and artificial grass is just taking as well. What this means is that public land has to work harder for biodiversity. And by public land, I mean cemeteries, which is why I'm here today. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to go through 3 issues that I think are a problem with the cemetery. Firstly, plastic. This is a Kingston ecologist who has suddenly started a campaign to get it banned. If you walk into your cemetery, you will see the first shredded bits of plastic flower before you get to the first grave. This is everywhere. It's the same in every cemetery. Eventually, someone is going to have to do something about this. It's difficult, because obviously the bereaved want to leave plastic flowers because they can't attend graves to change the flowers friendly. Not just plastic flowers, it's the wrappers that come in natural flowers. They're in all the hedges. They all eventually dry out, crumble, blow over, and then the contractors, not their fault, but they've got big machinery, they just shred it. So plastic becomes like plastic. Next slide, please. A few examples. I mean, I could photograph all day. You don't notice it. You go in there, you see beautiful cemetery, nice neat rows, trees, open space. But I guarantee you, it's everywhere. There are a few of us who it's up. It's a thankless task. It takes forever. The solution is something like that. This is your cemetery too. Very tasteful alternative. It kills 2 birds with 1 stone. It reduces plastic and it improves biodiversity. Now, obviously, you can't just tell everyone no plastic. Phase this is in over a long period. You could give them a year's grace. Say after that, please plant something. There are ways around this, we think. But it's only going to get worse. By the end of the century, you're looking at confetti. Every cemetery didn't use plastic flowers. We're seeing the original flowers planted 5 or 10 years ago are starting to dry out and going everywhere. Linked to this, you mentioned lilies. I think it would be a great opportunity for lilies to not just sell their lovely cakes, but to sell some natural flowers, plants. It's an opportunity. I do think you mentioned the governance statement earlier. Merton is meant to be a sustainable borough. I think this links in with these wider sustainable principles. Let's try and get rid of plastic. Let's try and improve biodiversity. Two things going on there. Next slide, please. Bearer beams. These are a personal bug of mine. I appreciate you are a lawn cemetery. And years ago, you decided to become a cemetery. And the bearer beams play their role. Unfortunately, they're made of cement. 8% of all global carbon emissions come from cement, second highest after, actually third, possibly after transport and fertiliser. I don't know if it's still the case. I looked at the carbon accounts, both boroughs. I couldn't find an entry for bearer beams in either. Whether you're accounting for all this cement use, yeah, that's a side issue. but it's not an environmentally friendly way. The cemetery next door, Morden Cemetery, use bare beams. They have a lawn section. They did introduce them many years ago. No one can remember quite when, but then they decided to stop and revert to just normal open ground, which they don't even level out. They just bury people straight in the ground. Next slide, please. It is my belief that bearer beams make people buy headstones. There are some people who don't want headstones. They say, Uncle Albert wouldn't have wanted all this fuss. Headstones are expensive. There is also a religious element to this. In the Muslim tradition states burials should be as simple as possible, to the point of no headstones. The Saudi royal family are all buried in unmarked graves, which is how it came where it is. I don't know if it's the same across all denominations.
Yeah, I think that's like a personal choice, but only some Muslims will have a headstone, but mostly they don't.
Yeah. So there's one exception to that, and I'll come on to that later in your cemetery, which is quite unique. But that's obviously one of the Muslim sections and Catholic section, but it's just headstones. I believe people are being nudged into this because no one wants to bury their family next to a lump of cement, which is what you're forcing them to do with bearer beams. This is two of the Muslim sections in Morden Cemetery. You can see the difference. Some people do have them, it's a personal choice, but there is clearly unmarked graves. Some just have a small plaque, some have none at all. So there's a real stark difference. That's across all denominations, same with the Catholic section in Morden. A lot of people buried that headstones. I think, personal opinion, that there's an opportunity to make this work from a biodiversity and climate change perspective, but also from a financial perspective. Because as a cemetery, you are always trying to think of how do we pay for the next bit of expansion, levelling out, drainage, and roads, when there's no need for a lot of that. The Morden Cemetery shows that. They just bury people straight to the ground. So rather than borrowing money, you could just start to take money. And it could be financially beneficial if you have two options for families. Would you like to be buried in an area full of bearer beams, or in a more natural area where there are no headstones? You can get the idea. You can give people options and you can make it work for you. It just requires someone to sit down and look at pricing and look at the cemetery a bit more. But I think it's nudging people into changing their behaviour, making it work for them at a religious, social, financial level, but also making it work environmentally, both climate change and biodiversity. Come on to the point 3, management. You can see there is a huge difference, like Andrew was saying. If you walked into the cemetery today, you will just see mown grass everywhere. If you go into Morden Cemetery, you will see acres and acres of hay meadow, flower meadows. It's a very different management approach. This is the result. Morden Cemetery, owls, kestrels, wild orchids, you name it. This is one of the most important sites for wildlife in London. I do go into Sutton Cemetery, but once a month I go into Morden Cemetery every day. That's the difference between two cemeteries that are next to each other. Next slide, please. So this is the exception to the rule. This is one of the Muslim sections where they haven't got headstones. They've gone for plaques and they've planted stuff. It's right in the far corner by the recycling centre. Maybe they thought recycling centre horrible. Let's change this area. But it's very different to the other one. So I think again it's just behaviour. When people see headstones, we better have a headstone. When people go, oh look, they're planting flowers, let's do this. So it's one area in your cemetery that's different to the whole other one. Don't know why. I'm not going to ask these people why they go one route or the others. Private matter for them. I'm doing my thing. Again, I've mentioned this is about biodiversity, but it's sustainability. Changing these practices ticks all those sustainability boxes. You're improving the environment, you're respecting people's religious beliefs, And you can possibly make it work financially for them and financially for you if you think about having two different approaches to the cemetery, one with bare beams, one slightly more natural approach. I think you could price one a little less, one a little more, but the one a little less, you don't have the upfront costs of bare beams or levelling out. Right, next slide, please. So I'm going to go on to policy here. Are you all familiar with sinks? Sites of importance for nature conservation. Councils have to designate these areas. This is the local area. As you can see, it's covered in sinks, the exception being your cemetery and Hyde Hill fields. They are the only two areas that are not designated. Now, it is possible to be designated a wildlife site and a cemetery. I've done extensive research. There are 64 cemeteries in London that have designated sinks. Sutton has two. Merton doesn't have any, with maybe the exception of Morden Cemetery, but that's owned by Wandsworth. So that's not a criticism of Merton, because designation is quite a complex matter.
I was wondering, is it, I mean, because I know obviously we've always been working with Giggle and looking at the potential sort of sites.
I'll come on to that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get Hyde Hill or the Horsefields designated because within this area, it is the single most important biodiversity site. I can't figure out why it's designated. I've got a sneaky suspicion it's got something to do with being metropolitan urban land and getting it released from metropolitan urban land. That's a different topic of conversation entirely. I'm keeping a close eye on Sutton and their local. That's what I'm saying. Next slide, please. So this is the Horsefields. So just as an indication, peregrine falcons, all the birds in the middle row are all African species that fly through. You won't find these birds anywhere else in the area, in any of the three councils. You'll only find them really in this area B, as you call it.
Why is that?
It's probably because it's right in the middle of the green space. So if you're a bird up high, you just see 300 acres not slowed down. The African species, well, the peregrines will see the pigeons, so that's they're on the pylons waiting to hunt. There's a lot of blackthorn scrub, which is beneficial to some species. And the horse dun, the African species think it's the savannah. They think it's antelope, elephants. They just think, wow, brilliant place. Let's stop here for a while before they go to their breeding grounds in Scotland or Iceland. So they're just passing through. Finally, this is what Andrew was referring to. There are two policies that are quite new: biodiversity net gain and local nature recovery strategy. All developments have to have a 10% biodiversity uplift on site, off site. Now, there is a shortage of sites to deliver this biodiversity uplift off site. There is currently a big development, Monster Park holders, quite controversial, but they're having to do it off site. But there's nowhere on site to do it. It's probably going to end up somewhere like Chessington on the other side of Kingston. And you've got a cemetery that could take advantage of this. But it would require the registration of the site and thinking, is there an area that we could designate for flower meadows and get the developer to pay for this, for their 20, 30-year obligation they have prior to it becoming cemetery land. So I think it's worth looking at that. Local nature recovery strategy is linked to this. So this is a GLA initiative. It's identifying those areas that could be improved. So the main cemetery has been identified. You can't see it here, but they've literally said you could do all sorts of things here. There's not much going on in terms of biodiversity. Primary measures, it's all of them. Oddly, again, Hyde Hill and the Horsefields haven't been identified. I don't know why Sutton has forgotten. I think it just might be a bit of a no man's land. It's not quite Sutton, it's not quite Merton. Why it's blank, we don't know. But there is a lot of potential and it's been identified by the ecology department in Sutton.
Because we had to, I just sort of sit with Ethan from our planning policy team, and we're kind of doing the designations within the land, the land parcels and those potential sites, as well as I suppose a piece of work with DEFRA in terms of doing the surveys, looking at all the current nature reserves as the primary focus.
Yeah. So I'm not asking you to do anything today. I know you're limited by your 2, maybe 3 meetings. But what I would at least hope is that these are very valid concerns, issues that I'm raising. Not unique to you. I would hope, well, asking you to resolve, to put it on, didn't phrase that right. I'm not asking you to draft the resolution, saying you're going to do something today. But going forward, something that should be thought about as the board, that maybe you could resolve to get your respective biodiversity to link up themselves, or with the wider community. There's this bird watching route. How can we improve things? How can we make better use of biodiversity, gain credits by developers, and also local nature recovery strategy? And also to think about the role that the cemetery has in this wider strategic area. 2 small parcels within 300 acres. And local nature recovery strategy is also about that mosaic of habitats and green corridors, green chain within London. So what can we do? So, for example, you talked about cemetery walls. Cemetery walls should come with hedgehog holes, because Morden Cemetery is full of hedgehogs. Yours doesn't have any. So it's kind of, sorry. In Yorkshire, I've never seen any in Morden. In Morden, I have got in Sutton and Merton. But it's the sort of joined up thinking between both boroughs and Kingston and all the different sites. There are 14 sites, some private, some. If we think of this as one big green space, it would be positive biodiversity. But at the moment, everyone's just thinking about their little individual site. That's it. Thank you.
I think definitely something there, but Charlie, in terms of the discussions, I think we were sort of talking about when we talked about laying out cemeteries and new sections, certainly something that could be considered. And I think it's also that some of the existing maintenance practices, stuff we've got in the existing cemetery, that there's certain things that, in terms of some of the operations, that could change. And I think, as part of the asset management review we're doing of parks and open spaces, and that includes cemeteries and allotments, is looking at where that potential is, particularly around the margins. But there's other big areas in terms of that, the plan that shows the, on the tree report, there's new section, there's new opportunities there, different habitat types that could be maintained with just a sort of slight change in maintenance practice. But I think, there's also some whole scale changes that if you're laying out a new cemetery that you are planning like 10 years ahead, that it does allow you to do that and kind of look at it.
Sorry, hang on.
So there's a couple of things I wanted to say, whether you could perhaps work with Wandsworth Council and find out how they got the sink and what kind of steps you need to do. Is that something that you can?
Yeah, so just to say, like, in terms of that process, so I obviously I oversee your college's space at Mitcham Common, Martin Boyle, and Martin and myself are working in the policy team at the moment in terms of the designations, and particularly designating a lot of I think that the priority is obviously the local nature reserves, where we've got the funding, we've done the biodiversity net gain reports for, again, mapping the habitat types. But as you say, Charlie, I think the other piece of work that we're doing with Giggle is the fact of looking at the potential sites for the future as well. So again, I'm more than happy to.
It's
been a lot of cross
to us to see, what steps we have to do.
I think because I think we're like sort of saying, like, because obviously Kingston as well, just in terms of that for the Hive. So, because it is, we sit on the Pet forum, so it is a regular, certainly.
Good shared practice. Second point is more of a public education piece from Merton that we could be doing, which is, I don't know how this can happen, but is there a kind of piece of work that we can do on take your plastic home, when you're leaving your flowers for your loved ones, some sort of kind of public awareness campaign Is
Yeah.
there something we can do on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think as I say, obviously we've got, because Garth Road, obviously the fact that we've taken this, you know, the waste and the street clean in-house, so we've got a lot more engagement officers that have an opportunity there. And again, oh yeah, from a green spaces point of view. The other thing, I think,
Maybe contact the local florists and funeral
Funeral directors,
directors and say this is a campaign that Merton and Sutton are doing to ensure that people do think about laying their flowers, taking the plastic home.
there's another one that Charlie mentioned, and I know I've been talking to Mark Robinson from the cemetery about, but we have a large glass house on Sutton Joint Cemetery. And that idea about, you know, we've got a lot of friends groups at the moment within the borough that actually grow a lot of their own plants and cuttings. So again, if we were looking to mobilise something, it's not a bad little venue that's out of the way, so it's the back of the cemetery site, but it's on site. And that thing about, looking to plant native or look at species, you're looking at something that's a bit more sustainable, because again, there's a lot of, there's definitely an opportunity there.
Yeah, I think, thank you very much for that. But to be honest with you, I think as a cemetery, to convince somebody to just go and bury the loved ones in an unmarked grave would be very difficult, because a lot of people have the idea that when people are at an unmarked grave, they've got nobody. Just but you know, a lot of people are sort of buried in unmarked grave who don't have anybody in the hospital or cancer. So people bury people and want to make sure that they know that their loved ones. First up, my husband and my daughter are buried in London. So I know they're there. Nobody forced me to go and buy a headstone because I feel that I want to make sure that they're really in space. So it has to be an education of convincing people that maybe it's a better way. If you're thinking financially, it'd be better, it has to be way better than what they're paying. If you're going to pay about £100 or £500 less to put your family in an unmarked grave, well, maybe some people, but there's a lot of people who do that. If we've got green space somewhere else and we're able to do, what we really want to do, I think that'd be fantastic. But if we want to do that, we have to start educating people about this is a new way of it. But the thing is educating and not forcing people, because obviously it's not what happens someday. It becomes, this is what you have to do. And that's why people get resentful. We want people to be able to want to do it for you, be happy about it. Yeah.
I share your, it would certainly be about choice, so I'm saying anyone.
I'll try. Thanks for coming also. If you talk about edge of country, we have one in Merton. You can just start it up. Or pop size quite a lot this year.
Well, yeah, I think the point is, Morden Cemetery next door does have hedgehogs in. People put the holes in fences. How do we get those hedgehogs into the wider into your cemetery when it's got brick wall and metal railings? Unless we get the proper sanctuary and put them straight in.
But personally, I think they should roam free. I don't think anyone should really go and interfere with them as long as that you're not in danger. Because I mean, if you notice when you do approach them, they can be little balls. They don't want to be touched.
Yeah,
that's me.
I think I'd like to see a hole in the wall.
Yeah, again, you have a rather extensive, again, obviously probably if they want to go on to Golf Road, but there might be other perimeters and stuff obviously on the around the cemetery that we could look at. Because again, I think the Golf Road goes straight onto the road and probably wouldn't want to crawl on that. But there's definitely obviously some of the rear boundaries that go on to closer to the Horsefield side. But again, as you say, it's a suite of those, and we are considering it. And if you are laying out a new cemetery and you are, because there are other means and there are other processes to burial systems. So we do work with the Morden Cemetery because obviously as part of that, board, they're going to feed into us. So yeah, it's certainly worth a discussion and look at some of those sections and how they've laid that out. So,
any further questions?
Thank you very much. That was really helpful. I've learned a lot myself. I guess, like we've all said, just to echo what everyone did, I think it's about education, just to let people know what the benefits are, go out in different groups, different faith, community, charity groups, trying to put the word out there, let them know, and schools as well. If there's such an early stage, I think long term, this would really help. So yeah, thank you.
No, and sorry, just to add the points that you were making, I don't want to force anyone to do anything. I think the choice is fundamental, and nudge is the word.
Eventually somebody will talk about you doing it. We watch how the way life goes. We start off with something that we, choice, and then it becomes, this is the way we're doing it. But it won't be you that must be in that position. Don't watch your life.
Also remind me what issue could direct officers to effective meeting on the progress they've made based on this presentation. It varies. I'll drop you some of my notes and things that were problems I managed.
I think that's it. No further questions from anyone. So I'm going to just say that the plan for this, thank you for the presentation, is that in the next meeting, officers are going to report back on the presentation and any actionable points from that. Sure, there'll probably be some conversations outside of, maybe you can report back on those first. So I'm going to close the meeting. 3:29. Thank you.